and welcome, my friend, to the Minnesota Gardening Podcast. It is my absolute honor to have you here today with us for this bonus episode of the spring 2022 season, all about growing your own food and starting seeds. And it has just, before we get too far, I have to say thank you. Thank you so much to every single person who has listened to the podcast, who's shared it. So many of you have given us ratings and reviews wherever you listen to podcasts. You have no clue how much those help get the word out and help other people find our Minnesota Gardening Podcast. So thank you so much, everybody. This is really exceeded all of my expectations for what we would have for this season of the podcast. I just kind of thought we would trickle out, but we did not trickle. We roared, and it was just awesome. So thank you so much for being there and supporting the podcast and listening and sharing. So just keep doing that as you run into gardening friends. Just let them know to find the Minnesota Gardening Podcast. I am deeply appreciative of that. And so today we have a bonus episode for you. And if you haven't listened to the entire season, there's just so many great episodes in there, all about indigenous seeds and with Dream of Wild Health, how to start plan your garden for preserving, how to extend your seasons. In-depth 3 episodes on how to start seeds. It's a masterclass tutorial type thing, all in seed starting, with a lot of extra information that I know you and know people are absolutely loving. So thank you so much for being here, and go back and make sure to listen to all of the episodes as well. So today we have just another great guest for you. We have Meg Cowden. She runs seed2fork.com, and she has seed2fork on Instagram as well. And she has a brand new book that came out in March, and it's called Plant, Grow, Harvest, Repeat. And it's all about gardening in succession. So succession gardening, so you have a continuous flow of food from your gardens, and how to do that, and mostly how to think about it. And so I'm recording this intro after we recorded the episode, and Meg is she's such a wonder. I mean, she has such a thoughtful, incredible way of looking at the world and how she incorporates nature into her succession gardening. And it's just I learned a lot from her. I learned a ton in the book, so that was really great as well. So I highly encourage you to pick up Plant, Grow, Harvest, Repeat and go from there. But here, before I ramble on any further, is Meg Cowden from Seed2Fork. All right, friends, I am extremely thrilled to have just an awesome person with us here today. We have Meg Cowden from Seed2Fork is here with us today to talk about her incredible new book, all about succession planting and how everybody can use that in their gardens here, especially in Upper Midwest in Minnesota. So Meg, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, Brad. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I really, really love your book first. I just want to say that. And since I found you on Instagram, where everybody can follow you at Seed2Fork, you are just so knowledgeable, and you share so much with the community, and just do an incredible job of teaching people how to do things. And your book does the exact same thing. So I just wanted to fanboy over that a little bit as just to how awesome you are. And also our mutual friend, Heidi Highland, who was on another episode of the Minnesota Gardening Podcast. She loves you as well. So it was a fun connection to make there. But first, let's talk about your garden and just let everybody know where you're at and what your garden looks like and how that works for you.
Yeah, so we ditched the city. We lived in the city for like 14 years, and we're going on 6 years here. We're out in the West Metro, and our garden is now probably slightly larger than our city lot was. So I think it's a little more than 1/8 of an acre, and it is part perennial, but largely annual. I was going to say edible. It's all edible, largely annual crops. And it used to be in-ground beds. We transitioned last year to raised beds, which was always our goal. But, I'm a gardener. So when we moved here in July of 2016, we didn't have a garden that summer. but we focused our that entire fall on getting ready for the 2017 garden. And so we went with in-ground beds at first because it was the fastest path to growing at a larger scale. And so it was about 5 years in when we transitioned to raised beds. So it's a work in progress. I think any gardener knows that the garden is never done. And that is what is reassuring and comforting. To me, it's not daunting. It's exciting. Just that there's a constant opportunity to grow something new and change things.
And your garden has so many opportunities in it with, I love the way you have just the irregular bed shapes and how there's a lot of things on angles, and it's not just a square box kind of garden. It's got look and it's got feel and it's got character to it. How did you decide to go with that type of look and feel for your garden?
Our property is also known as Walnut Grove. Like if you look at the map. So our entire front yard, black walnuts. Our backyard, black walnuts. This was the sunniest part of our yard, and that is why it's the garden. It is not flat. It's on a hill. It is flanked by a flagpole lot driveway to the east and our septic tank to the west and our driveway to the north. The barn was the focal point. I saw that barn. It was shrouded in trees, and I was like, this is where my garden will be. And I'm very visual, so I very quickly knew we could do it. But there's quite a steep drop off, and we've built, some of the beds you can see them in some photographs that they are quite terraced. So we just worked with our land. I mean, you don't need a flat piece of land to garden, as many cultures know. You can garden on a hill successfully.
Exactly. And it's just incredible. So I encourage everyone, we'll put pictures in the show notes for this episode that people can find at minnesotagardening.com. So let's talk now about succession planting and succession gardening. And most of our listeners are younger folks who are just getting started in gardening, may have started during the pandemic and are starting to gain skills and move forward with that. But they're also really busy people with lives and family and work and all those things that they're juggling. Can you talk to folks about what succession planting and succession gardening is and how that fits into a busy lifestyle that people have?
Yeah, I think it's the absolute most important tool that we all have. If you think about, we all go to the grocery store. I go to the grocery store, even though I have this massive garden. Every week, you might see something slightly different there. That's because gardeners are constantly replanting their fields. They are constantly renewing their landscapes. And so we can do that on our smaller scales. And what it does is it actually lets us know that whenever we can get to our garden, there will be some seeds to sow. I mean, that, Brad, is like the highest level picture that I would like to paint for someone who's brand. And and we can drill down into that. It means, there are seeds at certain time of year, and the book totally gets into that. So we can dive in deeper.
Yeah, let's do that. So with the book is called, I've got all these Post-it notes in my book here today, but it's called Plant, Grow, Harvest, Repeat. And it teaches everybody about how to do succession planning and what that actually means. And so, as you were saying, you can constantly renewing pieces of your garden. And how does that fit in with, actually, I'll ask the question a different way. One of the biggest things that I have learned from succession planting in my gardens is it keeps me more engaged and it keeps me more active in the garden than if I just the old way of doing it, of planting things in the spring and moving forward with that. And that's why it works for me. But one of the things I liked a lot in your book, it's in one of the first couple chapters, it has, your experiments have proven time and again that anything goes, and mixing plants that make you happy or mix plants that you've noticed seem happier together. For me, those pairings depend either on aesthetic nuances or are driven by a plant's space needs. I subscribe to the does it work for me mindset. That's obviously quoting from your book. Mm-hmm. How does someone decide and learn what works for them with succession planting?
Yeah, and that was also me saying that I don't really subscribe to companion planting, like the philosophy of companion planting. That was my way of being like, do you really need carrots next to tomatoes? There's so much information out there. And I really wanted my book to say, it is your garden. You make the rules. Don't trust what you like to eat. I think number one, people should be growing what they enjoy eating. That is the biggest motivator for anyone who's new. And we all love plants that are very productive, right? So like tomatoes produce time and time again, whereas a cabbage produces one head of cabbage and it's done. So in terms of your space needs, there's that to consider, right? In terms of what you want to be growing. And in terms of pairing things together, there are so many aspects to that we probably can't get into it too deeply, but there is the space needs. And then in the first chapter of my book, I talk about succession in the landscape, and our gardens are really like mini forests in a way, or mini prairies, in that a plant in any space is going to become the tallest in that space, right? And the tallest plant will produce shade on a micro scale. I'm talking feet, right? I'm not talking across a yard. I'm talking in a little area, but that's going to impact its neighbors. So you have to decide what plant is going to be the dominant plant or the overstory plant in any given area and what would be in the understory. And then they grow at different rates. So you can fit different maturation rates. So like a radish produces in a month, but tomatoes produce in 3 months, right? Or longer, depending on how early we get them out and how late our frost is. So you can pair plants that have different growth rates and different growth habits together. You don't want to pair, things that are going to compete with each other. In my book, I've got the tomatillo and the climbing nasturtium accident that happened where I really did put a climbing nasturtium next to my tomatillo and the nasturtium won. And it was, which seems kind of hard to believe because tomatillos are kind of unruly too, but it was not a good pairing. So experience, and I really do believe this, and I say this all the time, that I am not here to shortcut someone else's garden joy, because the best lessons are going to be learned between the plants that you choose to have a relationship with in your own backyard.
Absolutely. And you do such a great job in the book as well of tying things to nature and how we can take our cues from what's happening in the native prairies of Minnesota and the upper Midwest and what's happening in our forests. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about how what we see in nature is what we're trying to mimic in the gardens?
Yeah, I touched on this just a little bit a minute ago. This is very much a reflection of my own education. I studied natural resource management, and really, every day I'm looking out my window right now at the canopies around me, and some trees are open grown and other trees are growing very narrow without branches because they've been growing so tight. They are kind of fighting for light. So you can really learn a lot about spatial dynamics. So plants, sunlight, and nutrients and water are the primary driving factors of the success in your garden. And you can plant things too densely. I think that is probably the number one mistake that new gardeners make. I'm a big fan of giving things the right amount of space. And then the other aspect that I really love from nature is the timing of things and how different plants have different seasons in nature. And I think the prairie is the most instructive and beautiful teacher that we have, especially in Minnesota and in the upper Midwest, is watching how constant the blooms are across all seasons in the prairie, and how that is sort of a really lovely instructor for us to say, if the prairie can have flowers from, May until October, we should be able to eat from May to October out of our gardens too. And what does that look like? It looks like having different types of food. You're not going to be growing tomatoes in May, and not really in October either, but there are foods that excel in every season. And so for me, nature really helps bring that mindfulness that you were talking about with succession planting. It really deepens the mindfulness, and we can be inspired by whatever landscape that we're surrounded by, that we pass by every day, that we are immersed in.
And as we take those cues of the seasonality of our food gardens, like can you talk folks through how that rolls, basically, as to how you talk extensively in the book about extending the seasons and doing a lot more, especially on the spring side of things, and how you're able to create more food by extending those seasons, but as well as having a constant rotation into your gardens. Can you talk through how tangibly that works, like actionable kinds of things, how that works for people, what they need to be doing to get through an entire season of food production and growing their own food with succession planting?
Yeah, so the key is definitely to be using reach for the right seeds at the right time. And so in the spring, if you want to start a season extra early, you want to look at real cold hardy crops like radishes and arugula, spinach and cilantro, things like that that grow quickly, especially if you are space limited, like I think probably so many people are. You grow those things, they're going to be in and out of the garden in 45, 50 days. And so right now we're at the end of March, that would be the middle of May. So you could have a crop of greens and radishes before your tomatoes go in. And then when your tomatoes go in, you could put in basil with it. You could drop in some onions as well. And you could have that succession. But when the tomatoes get tired, you could replant in the fall. You could replant with spinach again and arugula and cilantro and radishes. And you could be eating until December out of that one space. So it's really the idea of, and again, this goes to what do you like to eat? I mean, I know we all love growing tomatoes. Not everyone loves to eat tomatoes, and that's cool. But maybe it's a different food group, but there are certain foods. You have to think about how long it's going to take the food that you want to grow to mature. And so if some crops produce and then are done, they can come out and you can replant that space. But other crops might produce ongoing until a frost. And so those would be a more permanent fixture in your garden bed. But like bush beans or carrots are great things that produce in a couple of months' time. And then you pull them out and you could put something else there. So it's a really nice way of having variety.
You also talk a lot about the importance of flowers and having annual flowers within your food garden. Can you tell people why is that an important and critical piece of a food garden?
Yeah, the more I grow, the more flowers I add almost every year. I think, first of all, who doesn't want to be surrounded by flowers? I mean, I think that that's logical, and it has so many ecological benefits is the thing. So it's kind of a no-brainer between humans wanting to be around flowers and then flowers having just innumerable ecological benefits for bringing in pollinators and bringing in beneficial insects, bringing in, we have, predatory wasps that will eat our asparagus beetles, and it's all thanks to all of the different kinds of flowers that we have flowering in our garden and around our garden. So the more flowers, the merrier your garden will be. And I use them in a space where I'm already growing things. Like I grow my tomatoes, and instead of only having tomatoes in the bed, I'll add flowers to the base of the tomato plants, which will bring in beneficial insects. So I'll put sweet alyssum under my tomatoes, or I'll plant marigolds in with my peppers. And the plants will give a little bit of shade to the peppers when they're ripening, which can be a good thing. So there's that added benefit. And the marigolds are edible too. So a lot of flowers that you can grow in your home garden also happen to be edible or have like medicinal properties. Like calendula is really great to tuck in here and there, and you can dry them and you can infuse oils and use them for tea and things like that. So flowers are like a whole nother world of food, of nourishment as well for not only insects, but for us.
And how do you balance that? Like, especially if you're in a space limited area, like most of our listeners are, how do you balance that? I want to have, food for meals, but also I want to have other beautiful things. And that's another really clear theme in your book, to me at least, was making sure that you're seeing beauty in your garden as well. It's just not like a industrial production line kind of thing for potatoes. It's making sure that everyone enjoys it and is part of that enjoyment as well. So how do you balance those two things?
Yeah, we've always had what I call auxiliary gardens, and I talk about this in the book. So at a bare minimum, add clover to your lawn will help bring in other insects and help bring in like the honeybees that are in your neighborhood. We don't have bees, but someone's bees are on my property all summer long. And above that, we converted every boulevard in the city to a perennial garden. At our last house, we did prairie in our boulevard and our entire front yard. So we're fans of getting rid of grass in small spaces. That might be controversial to some of your listeners, but I think it's a really important direction that we all really need to consider going, at least part of our yard. And
yeah, we talk about that all the time.
Yeah, and here I've converted all of the land surrounding the garden on three flanks of it have been converted to native prairie. So we have a huge kind of ecosystem sink, a huge space for native insects to flourish, which So I guess what I'm saying is if you only have a couple of raised garden beds, you can use those for just your vegetables and you don't have to interplant with flowers, but maybe you can sheet mulch an area close by and throw some zinnias in there or do something like that, right? So if it really is a choice of like, I only have one 4x8 bed, throw some pots down somewhere, use your boulevard, find a different place adjacent, right? Go as adjacent to your garden as you could.
I'm experimenting with grow bags this year for that reason, just finding new ways to do that for what works for us. And so, perfect. Well, Meg, we are bumping up against our end time here. I have a couple more questions for you, and then we'll talk about how people can find you and all the cool things that you're doing, that kind of stuff. But first, I just want to know what the book has a ton in it. It's got a lot of really, really incredible information for folks. What did you, in writing it, hope? What's the main thing you hope people get from it?
Possibility would be probably the word that I would like people to walk away from. I think there's so much in this day and age of how we live and how we're constantly bombarded by information and flashy videos and life being processed in 15-second increments. That's very unrealistic and unattainable. And I don't even consider it aspirational. I'm going off on a tangent here, Brad, but I hope you're with me.
That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah. So, but this book, I want this book for people not only to say, wow, like, I think, so it's saying a couple of things I've heard from a lot of people being like, if you can do this in Minnesota, this is completely inspirational to warmer zones. I've heard from people as far south as zone 10B that is taking inspiration from this book. So if I am inspiring people who live in like LA, San Diego, think about how much more we can all do here in the upper Midwest. And so I want it to bring hope and spark joy, for a phrase that's already coined. But I mean, yes, that was my twisted and long-winded way of saying that's my hope for the book. And it is kind of packed full of information. It's sort of like having me in your back pocket.
Yeah, well, I don't think this would fit in your back pocket, that's for sure. But it's a beautiful book with lots of incredible photos and everything. And I really loved how it's not really, there are a couple pages of very prescriptive of this is, you do this and then you can do this and then you can do this. But most of it is just, these are the ideas and the concepts, and you need to take those and mold them into what works best for you. And so that's where I started the conversation where I did, was because I think it's really important for people to understand that gardening is a process. It's a learning process, and people need to continue to go down that path, and some things are going to work and some things aren't going to work. And that's what I think you laid out really well in your book, is that you need to find the things that work for you. And these are the ideas that people can use.
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't really consider myself writing a how-to book, but a lot of people have told me that this is the best written how-to book they've ever read. And I'm like, that wasn't my intention, but thank you. Like I find how-tos very boring. So it's interesting to see how it's being kind of metabolized in other people. So it's been really interesting to put myself out there and then get feedback. It's like, that's good. I'm glad it's a how-to for you. I didn't know it would be.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't have expected that from folks, is to call this a how-to book. This is a inspirational, aspirational type thing to me, is the way I read it anyway. And so and everyone, like gardening, everyone's free to take it how they want.
Totally. Yeah. I call it more of a why to. It's like my why. It's why I garden, why I choose the plants I do, and all of those things. Yeah.
Right. And all that connecting back to, I think it was really important as to how that all connects back to nature and people observing what's going on. So that's really good. And so with observing what's going on, you have a lot of incredible things going on. So people can buy your book pretty much anywhere. I think I was the first to find it, right? In the wild.
I think you were. Yeah. I was like, oh, crap. I was at my son's orchestra concert, and I was like, oh, my book. Geez.
It was early.
Geez,
that was for sure.
Yeah. I don't think they got in trouble for that, but apparently some publishers will nick independent booksellers if they. So I never outed them, but
And I didn't either. That's why I just sent it to you in a direct. I didn't want to get anybody in trouble.
Right.
That's my Minnesotan coming out. So
yeah,
perfect.
So yes, it should be available everywhere books are sold. Yeah.
Called Plant, Grow, Harvest, Repeat. So people can find that anywhere. And then you've also got the Modern Gardening Guild that's started recently, right?
Yeah. So I launched a garden guild this spring. I launched it in March, coincided with a new website relaunch and my book coming out and everything. I'm kind of heading in a new direction of building community, and I'm really showing up for that community and offering them the daily glimpses, and I'm giving them direct access to doing Q&As, and people have been wanting recipes from me for years on Instagram, and so I am giving my guild recipes and lots of how-tos. And so it's a really great space where I'm able to kind of go deeper into the content that I love producing and supporting a really wide range of skill levels and growing zones. So it's a really fun place. So people can learn more about that at my website, seedtofork.com.
Perfect. And is that the best place for people if they have questions or want to, they can find your book there, obviously. So seedtofork.com and seedtofork on Instagram. Is there anywhere else you want to send people toward?
No, I think those are the best places. You can find out more about the guild at tofork.com is where you can sign up for that. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Meg, thank you so much for being here, and congratulations on what I can only imagine after seeing all of the press and the information out about it has been an extremely successful book launch. And thanks for chatting with our listeners about that today and about succession planning. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about today that you wanted to? There's obviously whole chunks of the book that we didn't have time to get into around perennials and trees and those kinds of things, which I think is obviously critically important as well. But is there anything regarding succession planting specifically that I haven't chatted with you about yet today?
I think that, if people are really interested, I want to just encourage them. It's never too late. And I think the book really outlines that you can dive into succession planting any season of the year. So even if you're listening to this in June or July, there's still time to grab the book and have a really successful fall garden. So succession planting is an invitation for every day in your garden.
Perfect. That is a great place to end. Meg Cowden from Seed to Fork, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Brad. It was great to talk to you.
See what I mean? I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And you can find all of the information and show notes at Minnesota Gardening. Just click on the Spring 22 podcast episodes and you'll see this bonus episode in that list of things. So you can find everything about Meg and all the work she's doing with the Modern Garden Guild and just all the different things she's got going on, which are really, really incredible. So one thing I want to I don't know if I need to apologize or say you're welcome for my even more sonorous voice today. I'm at the tail end of a cold and it has been beating me down, but I think that we are almost entirely over it. So hopefully I didn't just jinx myself there, but my voice is a little goofy because of that. But we are recording more episodes for season 3 of the Minnesota Gardening Podcast that are coming up, all about ecological landscape and environment. We've got some amazing things happening. So I'm really excited for that. So make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast. Make sure that you're listening and stay tuned. I think we might have another bonus episode between now and then, but we'll see what happens with that. But the next season will come out on June 20th for the summer season of the Minnesota Gardening Podcast. Until then, I hope you have a great time, and please check us out at minnesotagardening.com and join us up there. Thanks.